And we're live. Thank you for joining us. This is Rebecca Martin. I am the founder and editor-in-chief of Cinema Femme magazine. This is our inaugural film festival. 20 films from all over the world by emerging female filmmakers. It's been exciting. We've been having some amazing panels, some great discussions, and I'm so excited to announce our last block Q&A. This is block 4. So our moderator, I'll start with her, is Karin Kusama. She has done some of my favorite films, Jennifer's Body, Girl Fight, Destroyer, and I'm so grateful that she can join to moderate our panel. And the filmmakers, I will list one by one. Papi, which is directed by Gabriel Ortega. Clan, directed by Claudia Lee. Over and Under and Through, directed by Desiree Moore. Don't Burst My Bubble, directed by Victoria Malanjad. And our final one is Withdrawals, directed by Georgia Hudson. And Kelly Styler, the producer, is joining us. So I'm going to let Karin take it from here, and I'll see you at the end.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm watching everybody get onto the screen. Well, welcome, and I hope you're really happy and proud to be on this virtual stage representing your films. It's exciting, and you guys should be really proud of yourselves. And I got to watch all the films. I thought they were really fantastic, and I just wanted to start with a kind of general question about motivations and intentions. And I always find that a personal way into the material is kind of the only way in. And so I'd love to hear from all of you about what motivated making your films. I see Gabriella first, so I'm just going to go and I'll just point out in order the way I'm seeing it, and we'll just go that way, I guess.
Yes. Thank you. So excited to be here. Well, for me, that question's kind of easy because my film is a doc about my dad. So there's it wasn't a reach. I think what was special about it was maintaining the organic way we were interacting and not have it be staged. And there was a moment where it felt self-aware to also honor that and know that that's a moment where it felt self-aware, and allowing him to sort of get comfortable with it and with me and behind the lens as well was really interesting. So for me, just filming it as well, because I did it all, like it was just me and him, it was a great opportunity to introduce him to my world in a little snippet of time. So that and for me, that's something I want to do with all my films, sort of start from myself and where I find things to be extraordinary in my own life, and then start from there and build it up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How about you, Claudia?
Yeah, I basically came from sort of similar personal way with my dad, funnily, because my dad's from Scotland, and I would visit his family home in Scotland, which is where I actually shot my film. And we didn't go that often when I was young. And it was this like magical, enchanting place that I'd never got to go very often. But my grandparents' house was this really unusual place full of like weird and wonderful things. And it wasn't till a bit later that I visited this Pictish like monolith, this stone that's like really, really old. Like it was a Picts are like the earliest settlers in Scotland. So to just sort of see this thing on the side of the road in like plain sight, and it still has these engravings carved into it, like 10 minutes from my dad's house. It just like sparked all this stuff in me. And after my grandparents both passed away, the whole kind of dynamic changed in terms of like how I thought about like place, and how you can have like an emotional connection with a place because of the people who were there, and how when they go and they're gone, it can change. And that's kind of where it all began for me. And like, that's where the character sort of stemmed from. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. And did you shoot the film? So you shot the film at that grandparents' home?
Yeah. So no one lives there now. Wow. Yeah, it was really, quite a big deal for like all of my dad and his siblings, because for them to have the house documented, which my grandpa like designed and built himself. So it's like a really deep family connection, and my family are quite a lot of them are in filmmaking as well. So it has been quite a beautiful family experience in a lot of ways. So yeah, it was really
Wonderful.
cool.
Wonderful. Georgia, you are next on my screen.
Hi. So I wrote and directed Withdrawals. It was actually based on a very real thing. When a few years ago, my GP put me on Lexapro, which is an anti-anxiety antidepressant, and I didn't really think much about it or do much research, and realized I was just feeling very emotionless and blank. So I just stopped taking it cold turkey, which you're not supposed to do. And then in talking to several friends of mine, I learned that they had actually had very similar experiences with being on Lexapro and quitting it cold turkey as well, but all had completely different side effects. And the more I talked to people about it, the more I kind of found out that this is quite a common thing. No one talks about it, and people should talk about it. And it's not very studied either. So I just felt like that would be a good premise for a short film.
Nice. Victoria, you're next.
So my movie is based on my own experience as a young girl going through street harassment for the first time in Brussels. But not only, it's also based on my friends' experience, on my family's experience, and on many testimonies of women that I interviewed all over the world. And growing up, I quickly realized that it will never stop. So it started actually very early, but even later on, it's still the same story all over again. And that's why I decided to make a movie and talk about it, because I also think that we don't talk enough about this issue in our society.
Did you know when you were making the film that you were always going to, I guess I'm giving something away for those in the audience who haven't seen the film, but I'm just going to throw caution to the wind and do that and just say, did you know that you were going to reveal how young the female in question was at the very end, or had you played around with different ways of revealing that earlier?
So I knew I was going to keep it for the end. So the point was always to see her from behind, for the audience to be a bit confused about it. And then, I kind of wanted to have this twist at the end and see that, anyway, I'm not going to say too much if, I don't know if no one has seen the movie, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the point is I knew that, I was keeping that for the end.
Fantastic. Desiree, do you want to talk about your movie?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm the director of Over and Under and Through. And the inspiration for this project is, so I was just sort of thinking about the way that we look at one another, the way that in my own personal way of looking at other women. And so, of course, I was reading a lot about the male gaze in that process. And so I was just trying to deconstruct that experience of how we establish our looking and then our thinking about how we look at other women. And so it really came from that. And then personal experiences sort of put throughout the film of myself and also my mom, sort of borrowing some of her experiences to just sort of think about the way that we approach and think about and look at one another.
I was curious, the film takes a somewhat experimental approach to that kind of story. Did you always know you wanted to be working within a realm that was not quite linear and narrative in the more traditional sense?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely approached it like that. I really never considered dialogue as an important part of this piece when I was just sort of thinking about it. And so from there, I really just had to think about the impact that all the visuals would have and the way that they would work together. And it sort of led me on this more experimental path from there.
It's funny, there's a question that's come in that's actually asking about your film, particularly what drew you to using split screen for the film?
I always want to put a lot of screens together. This is just something that I like to do. I like the juxtaposition of things. I also like just the aspect ratio changing. I like what that can or what that can add to the audience's experience. I think it can pull us out of that moment in a really interesting way and make us reevaluate the screen that we're looking at. But if I had to be just sort of basic about it, I love juxtaposition. I love putting two things next to each other. So
interesting. I was really struck in Claudia's film and in Gabriella's film how much the landscape seemed to, the physical landscape, and actually Victoria's film too, although it's a completely unnatural landscape. I'm curious if you guys always felt like that was a draw in the story you were telling, or was there ever a moment where you said, oh, I could make this anywhere, to tell this story anywhere, in other words?
For me particularly, I'm from Dominican Republic, and in the past 7 years, I've been living in Los Angeles. So going home feels always like some sort of pilgrimage. And in those moments, my father has taken up this hobby of sort of internal tourism. And it's almost like I became a tourist to this country I lived in for 19 years of my life. And so most of the work I do now that is either set in back home or has some sort of connection to home, I feel like in a way as like me as the filmmaker, and also part of the story is me trying to reconnect with that place in a different way. So definitely, and particularly because so much of the film is about my father's relationship to nature and how that's part of sort of healing. So that was very special. This one in particular was, I had been archiving footage for a while, but this trip in particular was very spontaneous and surprising because I didn't want to go. And so I think finding that beautiful place and sort of my attitude at the beginning and then kind of getting this gem was sort of, I don't know, magical in a way. So it was truly very happy that I chose to do it there. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I think you're muted.
I'm still getting used to this way of having to do things. I guess this is our new reality. Gabriella, there's a question for you about what camera you used, because the question says the video camera displaying the date had me so nostalgic. What kinds of cameras did you use?
Well, I have a little secret to tell you all. I hope it doesn't disappoint anyone, but I shot it all on my phone, actually. Wow. And because I didn't have any other resources and it was also spontaneous. But when I was growing up, we would use a Sony Handycam, mini DV. And so I wanted to recreate what it would be. Instead of having home videos from my dad shooting me, I wanted to sort of recreate that feeling of me shooting him. But also to say that anyone can make a film nowadays. So and hopefully that's inspiring to someone that doesn't have a fancy camera and wants to still shoot something. Sure.
Claudia, do you want to talk a little bit about the landscape and that incredible scene when she goes up onto that hill and the wind is whipping around? Did you know that the wind would always be doing that, or did you just get really lucky?
Well, I mean, yeah, for me the landscape was always crucial. It was always like another character that was kind of as important as Maeve, the main character. And I think because paganism and Scottish history is so rooted within nature, and there's a feeling you get when you go into the Highlands and up hills like this, it's inevitably always incredibly windy. And I think I've had that experience myself where I've gone up and you lose a sense of your grounding and you kind of get lost in the wind. And I had this really strong image of image of her screaming into the wind and not being able to hear the scream because you're starting to become one with nature. And that was a turning point for me in terms of her transition into her pagan lineage. And it's she starts to become one with nature. But yeah, we were lucky about the sunset. Scotland's weather is bizarre because 1 minute it's sunny, the next minute it's torrentially raining, it's then snowing, back to sunny again within about 2 hours. So we were kind of going on a whim, like lugging all the kit up the hill. It took like an hour or so to like climb up to the top, and we waited, and then eventually the sun started to appear from the clouds, and I was like, okay, I've got to do it now. And it was just so beautiful, and like in that moment, the relief of being like, thank God, because it would have been awful to have to do it again, and it probably wouldn't have been the same if I hadn't had like the wind and the sun and like the kind of euphoria. So yeah, it was really important for me, the landscape.
There's a question from the audience asking to what extent did you research cults to create this very specific world?
It was less about cults for me and more about paganism. And like, I think there's a misconception or like an idea that people have about what paganism is, and that maybe it is a bit of a cult in some ways, but it's an ancient spiritual practice, and it's something that's like older than some religions in a lot of ways. And I did lots of research into the Pictish pagan people who were, as I said, the kind of first settlers in Scotland, and kind of looked into what was amazing about them. The main thing I discovered is that they had this amazing matriarchal society where like females really led the way and kind of dictated a lot of how the society was run. And I think they put a lot of emphasis into like worshipping nature and the sun, and also like fertility and womanhood was really crucial. And like for me as a woman, as I'm sure we all feel as female filmmakers, there's been a lack of emphasis in like complexity of female characters in a lot of genres, but horror being one of those. And so I kind of thought it was the perfect way of blending an emphasis in complex female characters in horror and also paganism in a way that was authentic, because it was actually a group of people that really did think this way a long time ago, and trying to bring that back into the present and recognize how great that is and how we need to do more of that. So yeah, less about cults, more about historic paganism.
Yeah. I have a question for Georgia and Kelly, who produced Withdrawals. I'm curious to ask you guys about tone. Georgia, you specifically, but how you approached the film. Did you always know that it would be sort of riding a line between drama and comedy? And perhaps you can both speak a little bit to your producer-director relationship.
Sure. So as I guess someone who has used humor as a coping mechanism my whole life, kind of become my go-to style with anything I write. And because it is such a serious subject, or, you know, mental health in general can be quite triggering, I wanted to approach it through a comedic lens, because that is a very accessible way of approaching a tough subject. Our actors are all like improvisers, comedians from the New York comedy scene. So luckily we had a big pool of comedians that we were friends with and that we knew. So on set, they bounced off each other, and like their dynamic was just magical. So they added a lot of the humor to it. But yeah, in general, I just think that anytime there's something that's like universal or relatable, there's some kind of humor there, pain and truth and comedy and all that. And actually met Kelly a week before our first shoot day, and it was like the stars aligned, because she filled in everything I couldn't do at that point, and just became like, my spirit animal.
Yeah. So actually, we met through the Upright Citizens Brigade comedy scene. So yeah, we had a good community to pull from. A lot of people that are experiencing mental health issues, just by proxy, because we get on that stage to deal with it. So I think from a producer standpoint, it was important for me, after discussing with Georgia, to hire a crew that was familiar with mental health issues, just to make sure that there was a safe set. Because I know a lot of times when I first started working in TV, I felt like this very aggressive set feeling. It's very, you know, and that's just not a good feeling. We wanted good vibes on our set. And I think that that's sort of how we managed that tone, was to create a very safe space. And we even had crew share stories that added to the direction of the film, just based on symptoms we didn't even know existed, through everyone's separate experiences.
That's fantastic. Have all of you guys, I'm just curious to know how many of you made your short film with a producer, or did you produce your own films? Who made with a producer? Wow. Okay. So Gabriella, Victoria, and Desiree were kind of on their own. That's rough. That's a hard way to have to do it, to be honest. You know, I think it's so important to find those people who you feel kind of can be thinking in the way that Kelly was thinking for Georgia. What can I do to, you know, sort of pull up the slack so that you don't feel the burden of every little thing? You know, it's so difficult. I see a really interesting question here for Victoria, talking about your casting process. The reveal of the youthful lead's face is heartbreaking, especially compared to the men featured throughout. I thought a lot about that as I watched the film. You want to discuss casting?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, the casting process took place in Brussels, but I was in London. So I had the casting through Self-Tape, and I got many great applications for the main character. So it wasn't really that easy, and especially that they all told me they've been through street harassment and they were only like 13, 14 years old. So but I found Jade, the main actress, and I just knew it was her as soon as I watched her Self-Tape. It was just obvious. I loved her, and she's actually very mature for her age, so it was really easy to work with her. And her parents were on set also all the time on set. She was only 13 at the time, so it was my first time working with a young girl on set, especially it was my first movie as a director, so I was also a bit nervous. But no, she was great.
And I was struck by the men that are portrayed in the film, in that there's a lot of kind of normalcy to them. You know, I never felt like, oh, I'm watching someone who's supposed to be a villain. And so particularly the guy who picks up the keys, you know, you just, the sense of always being looked at was really, really beautifully portrayed in your film.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that because I realized that so many people don't really know what is street harassment, and there are so many kind of street harassment, and sometimes even staring at someone for a long time.
Oh, sure.
Or having those really creepy looks. It's really uncomfortable, and that's why in this movie I really wanted to portray different kind of street harassment. And
Yep, you did a really nice, disturbing job of it. Desiree, there's a really interesting question here for you about how you storyboarded or blocked your scenes. I noted the framing in the film as very specific and precise. And did you bring any visual influences to how you approached that visual aesthetic?
Yeah, I think when I first started thinking about the project, I really was interested in sort of a wider objective next to something very, like, almost extremely close up, intimate, maybe uncomfortable. So I was really interested in those dualities. And so that did a lot for me as I went to think about every single scene and how it would play out, because I knew I wanted to have those two things. I think that I'm a very much a control freak when it comes to the frame. My background is in photography, still photography. So I did that for a really long time of just thinking about, you know, really where to put the camera. It's highly constructed, all of those things. But yeah, I mean, once I settle on that sort of wider shot where I have my whole scene out there in front of my audience, I have to contemplate how the subjects are going to move through that frame over time and make it interesting and maybe unveil things that you hadn't seen in the first, couple of seconds. When it comes to influences, there's a lot of things in this film. I almost can't even source everything out, but I love Soviet filmmaking or Soviet films from the 60s, 70s era, and their pace is just so slow. And but you have this payoff in the end, and I just love that tension. And so I tried to bring that in. From a more accessible point, pop culture is all over the project. So there's a scene ripped from Dazed and Confused, pretty much. But there's also a scene from Odd Man Out that I pulled from. So just thinking about, I was thinking about how we look at one another, and a lot of times we establish the way we look at women through media and through how we've been represented for so long in that way. And so it was really important for me to pull those visuals into my film and reconsider them. So and not just from the era that I was directly influenced, the 80s and 90s, but also before that, what that was influenced by. And so I was thinking about all those things, and it sort of just, it came together at some point, in the editing room. I had to eliminate things that weren't working, but yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Love those Soviet movies myself. Yeah. I want to ask all of you guys, what in making your films, or in being in the process of being filmmakers, what's surprising you? What's throwing you off guard? What's interesting to you? What's kind of coming out of the blue that you hadn't expected? I'm curious to know from all of you. Gabriella.
In terms of things that interest me, I think generational curses and the things we inherit and the things that make us similar to our ancestors are things that are just coming to me. I recently found a photo of my mom around my age, and we look almost identical, and that freaked me out. But in all the best way possible. And I'm just obsessed with lineage, especially being away and having sort of a migratory journey where I feel very much at home in the US, but having a home in the island and all those in-betweens, just continuously thinking about the footprints we leave behind, and what's the spell in all of that? What's the divine? What's the thing that's out of this world about that? So I'm obsessed with that. And hands. I have really big hands. I love, visually, I think I am fascinated by them. Not in a weird fetishy thing, just truly, I think hands are so beautiful in the movement with it.
Nice. How about you, Claudia? Did anything surprise you or sort of strike you as you were making your film?
Yeah, kind of in a different way. I think for me, I was kind of going into it with the expectation that I could do a lot of stuff myself. So I think from I work in the film industry as my day-to-day job, and obviously you see all these people together on set. Everyone has a very specific job to do, and without all of those people, it's not possible to get the job done. But because it was this small scale thing, and I had a really clear idea of what I wanted to do, it seemed like I could just get the key core team members, components involved, and then kind of wing it when it came to the art department and ADs and all of these things, which I don't know why I suddenly thought I could do it myself. But it was an amazing experience to learn how powerful collaboration is. And we didn't have an AD in the Scotland part of the shoot, and it was really hard because we were kind of all trying to just communicate and get things done, but without that person there to really lead and guide people. And because we had probably 10 of us, and it needs that guidance. But when we did 2 days of shooting for the night work, which we did in Surrey, which is near London, we had an amazing AD, and Roz House, she's amazing. And she literally came in and the whole thing was just a totally different experience.
Yeah.
And there was also like art department involved, and we had a few runners, and it was just a different thing. And like, it seems so obvious, but now I look back and I'm like, I can't believe I didn't think about all of those components and core team members. And that was a surprise to me, and something I know in the future is really important, to like not leave things out if they deserve the attention, and people are really good at their jobs as well, and like letting people do the things that they're talented at, and like letting them flourish, and how it adds to the end product in the best way possible.
Yeah, I completely agree that and I'm still learning it as, you know, somebody who's been doing this for 20 years, I'm still learning how necessary it is to ask for all of those resources, you know, human and otherwise, that you need, and really put your faith and trust in everyone doing their best work, and encouraging that experience, like, you know, encouraging that expectation, I think often means you get the best work from your collaborators. And so but the urge, particularly I think for all of us as women, is to imagine we can do all of it by ourselves. And we really can't and shouldn't. You know, we should get used to asking for help. We should get used to demanding the help, you know, because it's really the only way to do this job. You know, I don't really see it as a job you can do on your own. Georgia and Kelly, do you want to talk about anything you didn't expect to happen when you were making this movie together?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because on the one hand, like, we're both so insanely like organized and type A that like everything went to plan, but also on a deeper level, it was really surprising how just genuine everyone was on set. Like Kelly was saying, to have all these people come together and say, oh, I can relate to this, because in some way or another, everyone has experienced some kind of like anxiety or insomnia or depression or something. Or if not, someday you will. But yeah, everyone was just so resilient, I think, because of those experiences. So we've stayed in touch
That's
with
so
like
great.
all of
Did the
those people,
cast
which is
stay
amazing.
in? Did the cast already know each other when you started shooting?
I believe a couple of them knew each other like through the comedy scene, but they weren't like a group of friends, 4 friends or anything like that. So it was kind of good luck that they all did just like spark off each other like that.
Nice.
But yeah.
Yeah, you get a little lucky with improvisers because they're so used to, you know, playing off whoever jumps in the scene. So I think that kind of shows the friendship and bonding in there. I think from a producer standpoint, shooting in New York City on a low budget is not easy, and a lot of stuff happens. You know, we got kicked out of the subway 3 or 4 times. You know, we missed a shot in an apartment that we booked through an Airbnb and had, you know, not such a great experience. And you know, one of our actresses was an hour late one morning, and we only had 2 hours in the morning to shoot at 5 a.m. in this coffee shop. So you know,
get used to that, ladies.
No, and I mean, it's obviously like we're addicted to that. We're filmmakers, but you know, and so it was like, you know, it was a lot of that unexpected stuff. But I agree with George. I think the resilience of our crew and our cast, and just, you know, like how, like when we created a set that was a safe space, and encouraged our collaborators to do their best work, it just changed the whole environment, and that was unexpected for me. I have not felt that before, working in this industry.
I will say, if I can, it's surprising to me now, just rewatching it this morning, like what a time capsule it is, because we shot in December and I edited it in January, and then like we finished it just before the pandemic, and that we didn't know that when we were filming it, those would be our final couple months in New York.
In New York, yeah.
Right.
And then we left New York.
And that people can sit in a circle and chat and drink their tea without masks on, and in an indoor space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different time. Victoria, how about you? Did you have any surprising experiences? And I'll fold in a question from the audience, which is, did you talk to the male actors about the realities of harassment? And was that part of how you got such natural performances from them?
So the first question, I realize how important it is to have a plan B on set, especially with the weather. In Belgium, it's a bit like in Scotland or in England, like the weather changes all the time. So even if they say, yeah, it's going to be super sunny today, it's not true. So you have to plan that. But the thing is, I was quite new anyway, as being a director. So I learned a lot, and I still have so many things to learn. So I think also I realize how important it is to be on the same page with your crew, because I believe as a director, we have to make decisions. And if one crew member disagree completely with what we want to say, and I have a feeling, especially as a woman, sometimes it's like we are not really taken seriously all the time. So, and we want to be nice, of course, on set, we want a great vibe, but at the same time, we have to make decisions. So for me, it was quite difficult to find this balance. I wanted everything to go right, but at the same time, I knew what I wanted, so I had to be very clear. And yeah, it's not always easy, obviously, because everyone has different opinions. So I think, yeah, it's really important to be on the same page and work with people who really believe in your script, because that can be a problem as well. And, oh, sorry.
No, I agree. I agree.
And second question. So most of the male actors were from France, in Paris. And in Paris, street harassment is very common. It can happen every 2 minutes. So they knew anyway. I didn't really have to explain what was street harassment, or those guys really knew. They can see it like every day, on a daily basis. So it's unfortunately the reality in Paris. So they are really happy to portray those guys, and yeah, and I led them to be also. It was scripted, but I told them, look, if you feel like improving, like doing some improv, do it. I just want to be as authentic as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
It came across. It really did. It really did. Desiree, how about you in making the film? Did anything catch you by surprise?
I think when I think back to it, I'm always surprised that people just sort of let me do what I want to do. I don't know. I don't know how it even came together sometimes, yeah, I think asking is really important, which we had talked about just a minute ago. Not assuming that someone isn't going to assist you or doesn't want to assist you or can't, but that there might always be a sort of a way around that. I also had an Airbnb situation, which it turned out fine on my end, but maybe not on the other end. We'll see. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's always surprising. And I think that in general, I had to sort of reconcile with the fact that it's not everything is always going to go to plan. And that being flexible actually just makes the whole experience a lot better, right? If you already know some things are not going to work out and you have that in mind, then when it does happen, it's like, okay, and we move on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that that's just a learning experience from working, right? The more that you work and see your creative visions come to life, you get a sense of that.
Yeah, and I think that the more the more for all of us that we do the work, the more I find for myself, the more present I become in the day-to-day decision making. And so while I personally really like to have a plan every day when I'm shooting, I feel like the plan is there for me to understand what it is I'm departing from when everything inevitably goes to shit, which it almost always does. Or it often does. And so you have to be able to sort of understand what it is you need in this really essential way, and then be present with the circumstances in front of you to then kind of, I think, figure out, okay, I got to go to plan F, not even plan B, and I think that's it's a great skill for all of you to keep sort of cultivating, is that sense of adaptability. So useful. There's a great question from the audience, which is to all of you. how important do you guys feel film school is to you? And I don't actually know all of your backgrounds, so I'd be really curious to hear from all of you. If you went to film school, if you want to go to film school, doesn't matter to you. Gabriella.
I think it depends what kind of person you are, and sort of like your upbringing and what you feel in your artistry you're missing or you want to develop and you want to be mentored in. I didn't formally go to film school per se. I went to acting school. So it was sort of tied, and I find that my training in acting has been immensely helpful for both my writing and my directing, because it allows me to talk to actors a certain way that I would want to be talked to, and also it allows me to write from character, which is something I enjoy the most. Like, I love character-driven films. However, I found that being on set, like, I've been a PA, I've been crafty, I've done everything. I've pleasant, unpleasant, I've done it, and I just love it. And I think there is value in experience, and I think film school is expensive. So it's okay if you can go to film school, that's amazing. And I think it's a way, going to any sort of higher education allows you to have people paying attention to you. And I think that's so important to develop your voice. But I also know that there's a lot of politics involved as well. And, you know, if you find a good group, there's so many things online, there's so many resources, books, just watching movies, I think also helps. So to me, it depends on what you are able to get, like what you're able to do for yourself in your situation, but also it's what you make of it. No matter what you do, it's really what you make of it.
Right. What about you, Claudia?
I didn't go to like a formal film school. I did a degree that was film, theatre and TV, but it was more academic than practical. And I just did it because I loved the curriculum and what I would be studying. But I'm kind of glad I didn't now go to film school. I gave thought to applying, but what's been really valuable for me, in the same way as you mentioned yourself just now, is that it's working in the film industry for me in like many different capacities has helped me to make contacts. Like for me, I've done my kind of formal education of film by watching cinema and talking about film with other people who love film, and reading and some of the stuff I studied at uni. But I just think the most valuable thing that I've gained, aside from what you learn on set from being present and getting to like drink it all in, is making incredible friends who are also in the industry. And I was able to source that when it came to making this film, and just like reach out to these people. I was in this position. I was so lucky to say, are you free in 2 weeks to go and do this thing? And luckily they were able to make it work. And it was just invaluable, and wouldn't have happened for me if I'd gone to film school in maybe the same way, because it was really specific, technical, skilled people that came and got involved. So in terms of like how it can help you as a filmmaker, I'm sure there's loads to be gained from it. I just personally haven't had that experience. There's just lots to be gained from doing it lots of other ways. And also there's people who don't work in the film industry and they work in any other job, and they just spend all their free time passionately writing and making films on a mobile phone or on film or whatever it may be, whatever you can make work for yourself. And it's just amazing to hear how different every director's background is and how everyone comes to it in a completely different route. And I think that really speaks to the fact you can do it any way that works for you.
Yeah. Georgia and Kelly, did you go to film school?
Yes, so I love this question because I make fun of myself all the time for going to film school. But I also did like film studies, which was also, like you said, Claudia, more like analyzing scenes, movies, nothing really too practical. So I will say everything I learned about editing, directing, producing, I learned by myself. But like any other life decision, I would say like know why you're doing it and ask yourself why you want to do it. And if it's because you don't have anyone in your life who is interested in film or works in film, then yes, like you have to go find that community, because those are the people that you're going to like rise up with and work with. But if you just, like films, be ready to have your brain broken, because you will never be able to watch a movie again without seeing every single edit, all the continuity, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, and I certainly I went to like an undergraduate liberal arts, like, you know, theater, acting, you know, the whole shebang, and learned my technical skills there. But I grew up in a very small town in a kind of a blue collar family. So for me, it was like I needed a little more, and so I went and I actually got my master's in screenwriting and producing. And that just gave me like the up and go to like get out of my small town and like go try something bigger and better. But again, like I think that, you know, filmmaking is like the best kind of sickness. It's like, it's innate in you that you're the storyteller. You just are, like, you can't help it. So yeah, I don't think it's a necessary step, but I'm thankful for all of the kind of technical organizational tools that I've learned from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And connections.
Yep. Sure. How about you, Victoria?
Yeah, so I've never been to film school. I've been to drama school, but I don't think there's one rule for everyone. If you feel like going to film school, go. I do believe though that it's important to learn, so you can learn a lot on set. But now we have so many tools, so there are so many tutorials online. I do think it's important to learn constantly, like every day, even on your laptop, or because there are some technical parts that even if you're not, for example, a cinematographer, it's important to know also how it works. Then you can understand better each other. So I wouldn't say there's one rule for everyone, but it's important, yeah, I think, to learn. But anyway, you can learn a lot on set also. And if you have a great story, if you believe in your story, you should definitely, I think, make it.
It's really interesting to hear from you guys that you had access to acting programs or started in drama school, because I feel like that's the key relationship between a director and any of her collaborators. It's the absolute, I think, foundational relationship is with actors. And a lot of times, strangely, in film school, it's not something you learn, how to talk to actors, what actors do, how they approach their work. And so I think there's something really interesting about the idea that you might have an understanding of what that relationship needs to be, because you're sort of already schooled in that that conversation. That's great. I think more people should be approaching directing from that from that angle. How about you, Desiree? Did you go to film school?
I did not go to film school. I went to art school. So I have my master's in fine arts, and the program I went to is very interdisciplinary. So I started out in photography and just moved on to time-based image making. But I'm a little biased on this question because I teach in higher education. So I think you should go to school. But, my background is not in that form at all either. So yeah, so I think it's complicated. I think what everyone has said is very true. Some people are going to excel in an academic environment, and other people, it's not going to do the same thing for them. I think kind of crucial to this discussion is getting on a set that isn't yours. I think is a really important learning obstacle, because when you're not in control, I think you tend to learn a bit more about how people function, what their roles are. And so for me, being on set and other people's work in all these different capacities helps me understand what I liked about being on set, what things I thought worked really well, and then I could apply that to my own production. So I think definitely get on set ASAP. Like, if that's the thing, if you're looking for one thing to do, that's it. And it doesn't matter what your role is, just get on there.
Yep. And listen and learn while you're doing that job, right?
Yes. I would never assume to know your position on a particular set, even if you've done it before, a handful of times or whatever, because everything is different. Every ship is going to be run differently.
There's a really great kind of general question from the audience. that I'm going to ask of all of you, and I think the answers can go in every single direction. So how hopeful are you about the industry being more inclusive as a result of current movements? Where do you guys stand? Gabriella.
Well, you go ahead, Gabriella.
I think as a general rule for myself, I have to be hopeful always because I am an immigrant. And the moment I become jaded, the moment I should just pack my bags and go home, because it's already, I've seen a lot in the past 7 years because I started as an actor, and in 2013, I was not auditioning for the things I audition now, right? And I think there has been steps made. I also think there has been a lot of lip service. So what I think I'm hopeful because I'm hopeful about my generation, the people around me, my community, and the sort of connections I made with people like me or people that are willing to draw bridges. And I'm hopeful that people are longing for connection. And I'm hopeful that, through this pandemic, people are I've seen a lot of people break open, and that's exciting to me. But yeah, I think all I can do is stay true to myself, and do the best I can to, contribute to this medium and society and keep doing my work, because I'm not going to stop whether or not the platform is there. I'm going to make it, I'm going to make my platform. I'm going to tell my stories. I'm going to keep knocking on the door. But, I think I am hopeful that I think it should change, and it's exciting to see the things that are happening, but also I think there's a long way to go.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Kelly, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just saying, just reading, things that are in production now. I feel so hopeful that things are changing. Again, like Gabriella said, it's a lot of lip service, right? And I think it's our job as storytellers to not only be storytellers but advocates. And I think just doing this film now with Georgia in the mental health role, so many people have opened up to me that I've never heard before, and it's made conversations easier to have because you're breaking down that barrier in people. You're creating uncomfortable conversations that people don't want to have, but we need to have them. It's necessary for us to move forward. So yeah, I'm very hopeful. I saw for example, Grey's Anatomy is coming out, and they're talking about how hospitals are dealing with COVID, and that's a small step, but that's better than ignoring the problem from a network level.
Sure. How about you, Georgia?
Yeah, I'm very hopeful too. I feel like, especially after everything that's happened this year, it's just simply not sustainable anymore to not have an extremely diverse world, media, storytelling, etc. So I do believe that just like interesting voices have to explode, and there's no reason why it should just be one way anymore. So either way, just keep doing your thing, keep telling your stories. Like
I think we kind of lost you, Georgia. You're frozen. Well, you're back. We lost you there for a second, Georgia. That was a strange click. How about you, Claudia? What are your feelings about sort of moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that we're here having a conversation like this as all female filmmakers on a platform that's celebrating female filmmakers and stories about women, I just don't think that was happening like 5 years ago. So I think that's a great thing, that on a smaller scale, like short films are really important and they're a big stepping stone for filmmakers. So it's amazing that there's emphasis being put on platforms like this and what it means to women to be able to sit in a room and talk about film from our perspective. And then like on the flip side, I've been working on like bigger budget, like more like HGTV kind of stuff. And all of that has been really interesting because I've now seen on a number of projects I've done in the past like 2 years that there's been a female director on basically every TV show I've worked on, if not multiple, which is amazing because yet again, like that's something that wasn't happening before. So I think purely from a director's point of view, there's definitely stuff happening. And I think the conversation's being had now in a big way. And when I see a show that doesn't have a female director on its roster, I find it more surprising now, because I think it's outrageous that people can get away with it anymore when there's that many talented female filmmakers out there. So yeah, I think there's always work to be done, and we've got a long way to go, but I actually feel amazingly positive about coming up through the industry now, as opposed to your experience, Karen, which I'm sure was quite different to what we are now seeing. But yeah.
I think you're completely right that particularly in television, the pressure, even if it's just for the optics of it, the pressure is much greater to have some women directors on your directors list. I think feature films are a little bit slower to really respond, and particularly the bigger films, and just fewer and fewer studio films are getting made generally. So I think that's going to take a little bit longer. But I agree that in the past 5 years, there's been so much more opportunity for women, particularly in television. Victoria, how do you feel about all of your experiences and what you imagine your future to be?
Oh, okay. I hope to keep I want to keep directing. I have so many stories I want to tell, and I realize that it's such a beautiful thing to say a story in hoping to live in a better world. So that's my goal. I really want to keep telling stories, hoping that we can live in a better society, because I think there are so many things that we need to change. And I hope to direct more, and and I hope I hope also that I'm sorry, I'm talking really quickly because I think it's like like I'm rushing. It's nearly the end. I'm like, ooh. But yeah, anyway, I agree with what you said. Step were made, but we still have a long way to go. And I do think we need to stick together and work harder to achieve our goals.
Oh yeah, solidarity is key among women. Yeah. It's a huge component. Desiree, do you just want to quickly just give your perspective on where you think the business is at this point?
Yeah, I changed my mic, so hopefully you can hear me right now. I am very hopeful, like everyone else. I think that, from my position being in academia, seeing the students come through with their ideas, and being very vocal and very interested in being shown something outside like the canon, I guess. That makes me very hopeful for what we're about to see, I think. And I think leading by example, making sure that, when you have a production, that you think about these things as you start hiring and you get input from people, and, starting with ourselves is really important, and working out.
Yeah, I think that's so true, Desiree. I mean, I feel like when I was trying to get films made 25 years ago, there were so few women to even look to, with the exception of the few women that I did look to as sort of touchstone filmmakers, whether that was, Catherine Bigelow or Claire Denis or Martha Coolidge or Amy Heckerling. But I didn't create a world of obstacle in front of me, because honestly, I was a little too naive to even understand how big the obstacles were. And in a funny way, that really protected me from all the obstacles I would end up meeting, but I didn't go into it with a mindset of hopelessness. I just sort of plowed ahead as if I belonged in that space. And I think that's so important for all of us to just feel like we can take the space and not apologize for it. I want to just point out that on YouTube and on Facebook and on the Seed and Spark YouTube page, there is a link to this festival, so that anyone who's watching who hasn't seen any of these great films, they can buy a ticket, and they can, until midnight tonight, I believe, You can check out all of these great movies, and they're between 5 and 20 minutes. It doesn't take a huge amount of your time, and it's really worth watching all of them. I guess I kind of have to wrap it up, but it was such a pleasure to talk with all of you guys. And I hope you guys have had a great experience getting to get your films out there, even in this sort of weird new world that we're in. And I wish you all luck. I'm sure I'll be seeing you all again in some fashion with your films. So
thank you for having us.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me. I really, really enjoyed the experience. So just keep making movies, guys.
Yeah, we will.
We will.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.